It's time for Talkin Tauntauns, your Star Wars source at AIPTcomics.com.
Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to Talkin Tauntauns, your AIPT Star Wars podcast. I am JJ Travers, and I'm joined today, as always, by Jim Lehane and Connor Christensen. It's been a little bit, but we're back, and we got a really chock full of news episode for you. Pretty much all news today, with a little bit of comics that we're hoping to squeeze in at the end. But it's all exciting and good news. But before we get to that, how are you guys?
Very, very happy to be talking about Star Wars for a bit and nothing else.
I'm doing great. I've been catching up on my Star Wars to read pile, and my room is mostly all set despite the constant construction forever. So I'm enjoying spending quality time in my Star Wars room with my Star Wars friends.
Did we talk about your the comic while you were setting up last episode? I saw something on Twitter of, I think it was like, what was it? Or was it like the collected toys with the comics that you were setting up like into a wall? Because it looked awesome.
I thought it was sorted issues.
Yeah, something like that. But I remember seeing it on your Twitter, Jim, and I was like, God damn, that is badass.
Oh, my bookshelves and everything?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, I have a picture up on Twitter that has almost all of my comic boxes. I have on top of my bookshelves 11 comic boxes that are nearly all full, starting from the original Marvel Star Wars, running all through the entire Dark Horse run of every comic they've released, and then most of the Marvel ones, and then it proceeds to continue into my closet.
Nice. You gotta get filing cabinets. That's what I've got for my comics. It makes me look all regal and legal. I've been on client calls on Zoom, and somebody be like, "Oh, what do you have in the filing cabinets?" And I'm just like, "Oh, comics." And they're like, "Oh, that's nice."
Oh, I use a digital background at work. I don't want anybody at work seeing my home.
That's smart.
Well, I have an episode 1 poster directly behind me in my videos, so it's like I don't know how to. You get what you get with me.
Yeah, I've got it the same way.
All of my comics have been sold or donated except for one box of strictly Green Lantern, and then the rest are just trades now. I'm a trade guy these days.
Yeah, don't blame you. Speaking of comics, you're looking at a proud owner of, an accidental proud owner of 3 different copies of Dr. Aphra #1. Because I bought it digitally when it first came out, May 4th or May 1st, whatever that was. Read it immediately, loved it, and we'll talk about it later. Then the owner of my local comic shop knows I love Dr. Aphra, so he slipped it into my pile, so I picked up a #1 when it came out, and I was all excited. And then I saw my dad yesterday, and he picked up Dr. Aphra #1 for me, too, because he knows I love it. So I was like, oh, cool, now I have 3 different copies of the same book. This is great.
At least it's good, and at least not like Bounty Hunters.
Yeah, that's true. Nice foreshadowing.
Save it for Comics Corner, guys.
Yeah. Anyway.
Before we get to the news, though, something that I have to tell you guys, I did spend money on Star Wars today, right before the show got started, actually. And you'll probably end up doing the same after I share this with you. Mike Purcell, one of our contributors at AIPT and one of my co-hosts on Poor Taste Wrestling podcast, texted me this morning that IGN is having a huge sale on Star Wars t-shirts. There's over 400 shirts on sale. You get 15% off on top of the already marked down 20% price. And there's $50. Orders $50 or more, ship free. And if you sign up for the newsletter, you get a coupon for another 20% off one of your shirts. So that got me. And the sale ends in 1 day and 15 hours, so you can't wait.
Gotta send us that link.
I'm glad we posted that because this show's not going live before that sale's over.
So all of you listening cannot partake, but we're going to happily buy some.
Yeah, sorry, guys. Maybe we'll do this. Oh, there's the first bleep of the episode.
Yeah, sorry.
It only took 5 minutes and 20 seconds.
We're getting faster and faster each episode.
But the shirt I got that I'm most excited about is actually, you know what? I'm just gonna send it to you guys right now so you can check it out and let me know what you think live on the air. By live on the air,
you're hoping it's a good response. Then it's like the people that pop the question in the middle of a crowd because they know that the person's not going to say no.
Oh, I do love that though.
It's pretty cool, right?
So for the listeners at home, I will describe this to you in great detail. It is, I would say, it has a very 70s psychedelic rock look to it, and it's Emperor Palpatine casting lightning. And then, and his cloak even looks a little bit like lightning strikes. And then in his open cloak, where his wrinkled, gross gray chest would be, instead is a mural of sorts of Darth Vader with the Death Star looming in the background and a bunch of TIE fighters chasing the Millennium Falcon. Very much, like I said, very very 70s, like 70s rock vibes to it. I'm a good choice, sir.
Thank you. They definitely have looks like an shirts.
It definitely looks like an AC/DC like type design.
It's classic rock. Yeah, definitely classic rock inspired. I also got an Empire Strikes Back 40th anniversary shirt, but I'm torn between getting a Bad Batch shirt and a kind of classic arcade X-Wing shirt. So those are the last two that I'm, deciding upon. I haven't spent almost any money on anything while quarantine's been going on. It's been very good, but this sale got me.
I mean, I'm just sitting here looking at some of these shirts and thinking to myself, do I really need another Baby Yoda shirt?
I was folding my laundry this morning, and I was like, Star Wars shirt, wrestling shirt, Star Wars shirt, wrestling shirt.
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely going to buy a bunch of these, though.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
I cannot be accused of not supporting the economy during the quarantine, as I've spent probably more money since this pandemic started than I normally do.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. Speaking of Star Wars purchases, so my little brother turned 18 this past week. Happy birthday, Carson. You're a man now. Go get a job. And I went a little overboard because he's 18. Now, I won't talk about one of his gifts because he still doesn't know because it's still not here, so I won't get into detail about that. But I did, however, buy him the Star Wars Rebels, the Art of Star Wars Rebels Collector's Deluxe Edition. And this thing, I thought, the way it looked online, I thought it was going to be the size of a video game or a Blu-ray disc. No, dude, this thing comes in, it's like a textbook.
Yeah, the art of books are huge.
And so it comes in this really awesome collector's slipcase with an Inquisitor lightsaber and Ezra's lightsaber crossing on the middle. And then when you open up the lid, the lightsabers light up.
That's really
sweet.
Cool.
Dude, it's so cool. And it comes with, you also get an original storyboard when you open it up that comes in this awesome slipcase. It was just super, super rad. And I only say this to brag about how good of an older brother I am. And for Carson, because I know he listens, to realize how excited I was on this gift. To the point where, when it got delivered, I opened up the box and I considered just keeping it for myself. I really considered it, but I didn't.
You resisted temptation.
Exactly.
All right. Should we talk about our agenda here today?
Yes, our 67 news stories that we have to get through.
Yeah, we'll just say right off the bat, there's a lot of news about the Mandalorian Season 2 castings. It's ridiculous. I'm going to ignore the order that you've put these in and talk about the one that I am the most excited about. Can you guess which one?
I was going to guess...
Well, before we get into it, keep in mind that I don't think any of the ones that we're going to talk about have been officially confirmed.
No, nothing has been confirmed just yet. They are being reported by the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline, some pretty big spots. There's a few that I think are still... There's details around the castings that are coming from smaller sites that I don't 100% trust yet. But yeah, that is one thing to keep in mind for all the listeners is these are all reported castings. Granted, they're reported by the Hollywood Reporter, like I said, so it means they're probably accurate because the Hollywood Reporter doesn't miss too often. But there is still a chance that they could all be wrong. But anyway, to your point, JJ, I'm gonna guess it's Timothy Olyphant that you want to talk about first.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that guy rules.
I've maintained for a long time that he is one of the most underrated actors out there. I think his range as an actor is incredible, and he's just so talented. I don't always enjoy the films and television shows. They're just not my thing. Like that Western show, it's just not my thing.
Oh, that's what I was going to talk about. I love Justified.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Maybe I need to give it another try, but it's never him that I complain about. Everything I've ever seen him in, he's so good. I think he's just such a good actor, and I'm so excited to see him in Star Wars. I don't care what he's doing. The rumor is that he's going to be donning Boba Fett's armor, or armor similar to it. We don't really know, because as you said, this isn't confirmed. But supposedly it's Boba Fett's armor, but he's not playing Boba Fett. So who knows what that means. But with him and Michael Biehn, who's another person that I don't know has been officially confirmed or not. I mean, those two guys right there, I'm just like over the moon. And then it gets even more exciting. Jim, you want to talk about the big return rumored to happen?
Well, there's two big returns. I guess Tamara Morrison is probably the one you're referring to.
Yes.
And he's rumored to return as Boba Fett, but if we all remember that every single clone that ever was produced is a clone of Tamara Morrison, and so he could literally be playing any clone that has happened to survive the since the Clone Wars through the Galactic Civil War. And so he could...
Sorry, real quick interjection. Just for everyone that's listening, just to be clear, he played Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones. That's what we're talking about here.
Yes, sorry. But he could be Rex, which would be entirely possible that Dave Filoni would bring Rex back instead of Boba Fett. But as you were saying with Timothy Olyphant possibly donning Boba Fett's armor, that's because we do have a story where the armor returns in canon in one of the aftermath flashbacks. And so he could be, was it Cobb Vanth? Is that the person in the story?
Yeah, Cobb Vanth, the sheriff of Freetown?
Something, yeah, he was definitely the sheriff. So he could be playing that role and not Boba Fett, where Tamara Morrison could be playing Boba Fett. I'm always in favor of Boba Fett coming back, but like I said, since none of these are confirmed, I'm not holding my breath. But we also have a show that plays with flashbacks, and that's not something we normally see in the movies. And so this is entirely, any of these castings could be open to flashback and not current timeline. Because we also have Katie Sackhoff that is rumored to return as Bo-Katan. Katie Sackhoff, known for Battlestar Galactica, also voiced Bo-Katan in the cartoon, and since she is a very big TV actress, that there's like...
It's an easy transition.
Yeah, it's an easy... She would definitely like fit right in, and she has been in action roles, and so seeing her as Bo-Katan is... I don't see it as a problem whatsoever. So that's probably the one I see easiest to happen.
So it's funny, when we talked about this over Slack when it was announced, or when it was reported a couple weeks ago, you brought up something. So for me, the Katie Sackhoff casting is the one that sounds the best, but I trust the least, because it's what you said, Jim, is it's so good because she is the voice of Bo-Katan, and she could like crush it because she does that physical acting. It almost sounds too perfect. Like, it sounds almost like a fan casting. So that's why this is the only one that I think I'm really kind of like not taking as truth yet. But I do hope it's really true, just because I think Bo-Katan's an awesome character, and you know, just the more Mandalorians, the better, and the more we can like flesh out the Mandalorian lore. Especially because I want them to dive more into like the differences between different clans of Mandalorian and how they all interpret the creeds and the religion essentially differently. I can't remember. I think it was a different Star Wars podcast I was listening to. I can't remember which one. It might have been Star Wars Sessions, but they were laughing at like, what if you have this moment where Din Djarin meets Bo-Katan, And Bo-Katan immediately takes her helmet off, and Din just freaks out. Like, what are you doing? You can't take it off. And I don't know. I want them to like explore those different interpretations of Mandalorian culture.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I'm curious how they're going to handle that because, somebody else in canon that is very comfortable removing their helmet is Boba Fett. He does it constantly in the animated series. We don't see him do it in the original trilogy, obviously, but he's done it countless times as a younger man, so I don't see why he would make that change as an adult. It's just that he had a really small amount of screen time in those films. And we saw Jango remove his helmet plenty of times as well when he was training Boba, so I don't see why Boba would have that conditioning built into him or that creed. I don't think it's part of their creed. We know it's not part of Bo-Katan's. And we saw in the 5th episode of The Mandalorian, The Gunslinger, somebody standing over Fennec Shan's body. That was, for those of you that may not remember, that was the female mercenary and assassin that they fought in
played by Ming Yao Wen.
Yeah, that they fought in the desert and ended up getting betrayed by the seemingly clumsy Toro Calican, that kind of goofy, like, doesn't really seem like he's that much of a badass guy that was claiming to be this big tough bounty hunter.
The worst actor in all of Star Wars.
Yeah, nobody likes him.
Dude, he was awful.
And then he had a really ugly confrontation with fans on Twitter, but we don't need to get into that. The point is, somebody was standing over Fennec Shan's body, and one of the reports that came out about the casting for Boba Fett in Season 2 says that is Boba Fett standing over her corpse. And we don't know if she's dead or not. I guess I should say just her maybe dead body.
Yeah, that was the rumor at that time, too, was that was Boba Fett. I'd also like to point out, based on what you were saying, that I believe it was George Lucas who said that Jango Fett and Boba Fett are not actual Mandalorians.
Yeah, I was going to say that they are imposters, right? That they simply wear the armor, but they don't follow the creed.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's like canon or legends or where that falls in, or if that's just being thrown out altogether, which is entirely possible.
I believe it is canon because it's in the Age of Republic Jango Fett one shot. One of the cloners says to Jango, well, you bought that. They specifically say you bought that Mandalorian armor for a reason. So, so maybe it's not confirmed. It's very much hinted that you're not one of them. You bought your way into the look of it. Anyway, sorry, didn't want to cut you off.
So there's also a dropped line, I think, in the Clone Wars that they said like, they're not real Mandalorians anyway. Or mm-hmm. It's been a long time since I've seen the show, though.
And this is fact checking with Talkin Tauntauns.
But the other thing about it, though, is Sabine, Bo-Katan, Vizsla, and all of those other Mandalorians on Mandalore take their helmets off. So, what tribe is Din a part of here? It seems like it might be like a tiny offshoot. Could they be isolated from Mandalore? Could they have left because of a disagreement about the creed? Like, there's so many questions about it.
My personal opinion is that it is something that happened probably to the Mandalorians that kind of triggered or like reinforced their "we don't remove our helmet" sort of thing.
Perhaps when the Empire seemingly like wiped them out or enslaved them or conquered the planet, and we saw what's his face with the Darksaber.
Yeah. And so that's why I think that's where Katie Sackhoff is going to actually come in, is that if she does come in as Bo-Katan, it's going to be for maybe 5 minutes of the entire series. It will be showing us where Moff Gideon got the Darksaber and her death. That's my guess, is how we're going to see it. It'll be a flashback, and she won't be like around for the modern series.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's going to be... We're going to see the Night of 1,000 Tears. That's what they called it, right? That was what was referenced in...
I think it was 1,002 Tears.
Yeah. That's oddly specific, JJ.
I just saw you looking at me and slowly leaning back like he's full of beep.
Way to catch yourself. That was good. But yeah, that's what I was thinking was like, because that was such a specific thing that they referenced in what could have otherwise been like a throwaway line of dialogue, that I feel like they were like saying like this is something that's going to come up later. Because also if something's called the Night of 1,000 Tears, that's pretty dramatic and memorable. I feel like they have to. You can't say that and then not explain what happened.
Well, they're playing off of like historic, like current historical events. A Night of 1,000. That's like, why can't I think of what that actually is off the top of my head?
Are you thinking of the Night of Broken Glass or something like that?
Something.
Here at Talkin Tauntauns, we know Star Wars history, not real history.
There's also the Trail of Tears.
Trail of Tears, yes. So they're playing off the Trail of Tears.
That was a mass kind of rounding up of Native Americans, around like, I don't know, like 50 plus thousand of them were basically pulled off their land and marched to reservations. And as you can guess, it didn't go well for them.
They weren't happy tears.
Yeah, it wasn't a nice thing.
Not good.
But let's talk about happier things. Do we need any other casting announcements? I don't think so.
Do we want to go into like, is this based on all the casting we have, do we believe that all this casting is true? And is this overstacking the deck? Like, we went from a show where they had a lot of cameos, but really the cameos were here and there, and the show was really about Baby Yoda. Where now with all this casting rumor, like, we are stacking the Clone Wars and Rebels deck.
I think it's weird because they held their cards so close to their chest for season 1. Like, obviously nobody knew Baby Yoda was coming. Like not at all. We barely knew anything about any of the characters coming in. And like most of the auxiliary castings were kept under wraps. So it's weird to me that all of a sudden these major character reveals are being discovered and uncovered by trade outlets. And that's, I'm not trying to like throw shade at the reporters who all found these castings out, but it makes me worried that it's gonna make the character reveals less impactful if they end up coming to fruition.
I'm not worried, and I'll tell you why. Let's just quickly go through season 1's cast. Pedro Pascal, Gina Carano, Taika Waititi, Nick Nolte, Werner Herzog, Carl Weathers, Natalie Tina, Emily Swallow, Giancarlo Esposito, Ming-Na Wen, Bill Burr, Clancy Brown, Amy Sedaris. There's so many people that I just listed off that are huge actors in their own right. And season 1 was amazing. It wasn't perfect, but overall, it was amazing. And then I don't want to jump into this conversation just yet because we have a couple other news pieces to get to. But all the big name directors they brought in, like, that was worrisome. That was like, oh man, are these people's artistic styles and opinions going to clash? That's a lot of big personalities, a lot of people that are used to being in charge, and it wasn't a problem at all. So I think that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have a really good formula for how to make this show successful, and I'm not worried about it. I think like what it's easy. Oh, oops. Almost knocked my microphone over. I think it's easy sometimes to forget that, and this really, again, I don't want to jump to it, but it rings true in the documentary of the making of The Mandalorian when you see all these directors talk about it. I think it's easy to forget that, like, we're not unique and alone, and that we grew up with Star Wars, and there's a special magic to it, and that we're all giant fanboys. I think the same thing holds true for so many of these actors, and it's just such a special experience. Like, remember when Oscar Isaac, I don't know if you guys do, but do you remember about when he got the call that he was in, what he did?
No.
He took like a bar of soap and was like zooming it around his like bathroom or something, pretending that was an X-Wing, and like freaking out and crying because he was so excited because, you know, he grew up with Star Wars. So I at least feel like it's going to be okay, and that for a lot of these people, just the fact that they get to be in Star Wars is like what matters most here.
Yeah, have you guys heard what Bill Burr said when he got called and offered the job?
Yes.
Do
ahead.
we have to censor it?
No, because I'll just paraphrase. He basically went, pass. Like he had to be convinced by Jon Favreau to be in the show, which I'm glad he did because he was awesome. But
he's gonna be in season 2.
Yeah,
supposedly.
and he's coming. He's supposed to come back in season 2. But I just think that is so funny for so many of these actors and directors. It's a dream job for them to get it, and Bill Burr gets offered, and he was like, I don't want to do Star Wars. I don't know anything about that. So, but yeah, you make some good points, JJ. That they really, I mean, they did really stack season 1 with talent. I'm just more worried that we're now getting a little too overstacked with familiar characters, which is definitely a weird complaint. But I think part of what made The Mandalorian so refreshing was season 1, we didn't know any of the characters coming in. Like, they were all new, completely new faces, no expectations of what they should do or what they shouldn't do. So there was a lot more freedom. And now, if you bring in all these beloved, awesome characters, like, I'm not saying the characters they're trying to bring in aren't great, but with these characters, these established characters, comes established expectations. And established ideas of what these characters should do and how they should act. And I'm just worried now that we're so overstuffed with these characters that it's A, going to take away screen time from the new characters that need to be fleshed out more, and B, that people are going to, no matter what, be upset with what they do with these characters. So that's really my biggest worry. But at the same time, if all of these things come true and Ahsoka shows up and Captain Rex is in there and Boba Fett comes back in, you're not going to see me complain. I'm going to be very, very happy. I don't know. Maybe I'm just worried about the state of the fandom, that they'll find something to hate about whatever these new portrayals are.
This does kind of find you tipped off a thing in my head, Connor, that this does kind of remind me of the Rebels formula. Season 1 of the Rebels was the Rebels, like the main characters of the Rebels. It was season 2 that they started bringing in the Clone Wars characters. Like Ahsoka appeared at the very end of season 1, like the last 2 seconds of the season. But it was season 2 that you really got like all the characters that we're familiar with from the movies and from the Clone Wars that were kind of stacking into season 2 of Rebels. And that seems like, if these are true, that they're following that formula. Season 1 was all the characters from The Mandalorian, except for that 2 seconds at the end where we got the Darksaber. And now season 2, if it possibly stacking in with more familiar characters now that we have a base. And Rebels, again, is my favorite show. And maybe like Dave Filoni clearly knows what he's doing. Jon Favreau clearly knows what he's doing. Like, these guys are not successful for no reason. And I'll wait and see. You guys have calmed my concerns.
Now, I will say one thing before we move on to the next news story. All these castings are great. I've said that multiple times. But there's actually there's one Mandalorian that I do want to see the most show up in this.
Boba
and
Fett.
The real Boba Fett too. Which also, to go back to what you were saying about his appearance in the Gunslinger episode, I was apparently the only person on the internet who didn't know or think that was Boba Fett, because you, Jim, and Nick corrected me like, no, that's definitely Boba Fett. And I was like, what? No, it's not Boba Fett. And then after you guys explained it to me, I did a bunch of Googling. I'm like, oh, I guess that was supposed to be Boba Fett, and I just didn't pick up on it.
I had heard it elsewhere, and that's how I did the same thing as you. I just did it before you did it.
Yeah, but no, I want to see Sabine Wren pop up in this. We don't know what she was up to after Rebels. There's so much more to be explored there. It would make if Ahsoka Tano is going to be in this, it would make sense that Sabine's with her because at the end of Rebels, sorry, spoiler alert, people, if you haven't watched Rebels. But at the end of Rebels,
and we know she's alive at this time.
So Sabine and Ahsoka team up to go find Ezra. It would make sense if we're going to see Ahsoka, we should see Sabine. And I think it would be
plays
awesome.
Sabine? Do you pick an unknown? Who do you pick? Because how old would she be? Do you think?
Oh,
she's the same.
Mid-20s, right?
She's about a year or two older than Luke and Leia, and Ezra for that matter. They're all born right about the same time, so she would be
around 30.
20, no, younger than that, 27, 28, 29, about 30.
Yeah, and cast some absolute unknown to play her. Like, give somebody a shot. I don't know. That's just one character that I'm kind of itching for. Like, bring her. I mean, obviously, let's get this out of the way. Bring Dr. Aphra in, for God's sakes. Like, what? Oh, the fact that she's not in.
Too much for one season, man. That's too much.
Actually, they're all in
Aphra
one episode.
Give her
Aphra would
her
need
own
like
show.
a whole season to mess with this guy.
Yeah. Anyway, that's just the one character that I'm still hoping shows up. Other than that, I think they're good, but I would love to see Sabine pop up.
All right. Let's talk about some other stuff from the world of Star Wars.
There's
Jim,
other news?
Our
Oh boy, is there.
Being our resident and VR expert here, why don't you bring us into this next one?
Expert. I've played 2 games.
AKA the
Connor and I
only one
have
of us
played
who,
none.
Yeah, the only one of us who owns a VR headset.
Yeah. So the ILM X Labs, who are basically the ones at Lucasfilm who have pioneered the VR experience for Star Wars, not only through Vader Immortal for Oculus. They've done other stuff actually before that. They helped work with the Void on their Secrets of the Empire game, and they've done a ton of like random things. Well, they have announced that a new game is going to be coming to the Oculus, and I'm actually like really excited about this. It's called Tales from the Galaxy's Edge. And it's going to take place right around the same time as all the Galaxy's Edge experiences, which is between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. If you've been to Galaxy's Edge, that's when the Millennium Falcon ride takes place. That's when the Rise of the Resistance ride takes place. And everything's supposed to take place in that time period. And so this game is supposed to be an action-adventure game where you interact with the elements, I'm guessing the people in the game at around that time, and you can actually affect the game itself based on what you do. And so it's not supposed to be just you're in the game and you're interacting with the players as you're supposed to sort of thing. Like you talk to them, they tell you what to do, you go to the next thing. Supposedly, like your interactions with them can affect the story.
So it's more like RPG, like.
That's the feeling that I'm getting, like an action-adventure RPG in VR that's set in Galaxy's Edge.
Interesting. My mind immediately thinking about this goes to, like, how they could... Maybe this sounds weird, but, like, I just think, like, this could be integrated into, like, tabletop gaming, too. Where, like, you all put on a headset and you get to see the virtual world as you do your game. Sorry, that's a total tangent that just popped in my head. But it is a good announcement because, like you said, the company doing it, ILM, Oculus, and Lucasfilm have an awesome track record with the VR stuff. And I thought it was interesting because they made a point in the press release not to call it a video game. They were like really hammered home, this is a VR experience. This is an adventure. Yes. So they have like really grand expectations for this.
They're also very... Cool. They're also very vague about it. Like I read the press release 3 times because every time I read it, I'm like, I don't remember what exactly it is. Hold on, let me read it again. And I'd come back and go, I don't remember what it is. It's just because it doesn't really say what it is.
Yeah, they're definitely keeping it under wraps. But I don't know. It's cool for the people who can't go to Galaxy's Edge. Though I kind of figure if you're somebody who can afford a Oculus headset, you can probably afford to go to Galaxy's Edge.
Well, can't go to Galaxy's Edge while a pandemic is ongoing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a nice little bit of escape for people.
I'm super excited in that, like if they, which I assume they will, basically 3D scan the actual park, and now is the perfect time. There's nobody there, and like put it in the game so that like your experience in the game would be the same as your experience in the park. Like you go to the park and go, oh, this is where such and such happened, because the layouts would be identical, and it'll be just as if you're in the park, but you're in a game set up as the like.
And then it would allow you to go to like areas within the park that you wouldn't be able to explore if you were actually there. Like,
or they could put areas in that spirit. They could put areas in buildings that aren't open. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's what
like,
I mean. Is like you could enter buildings that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. You can go upstairs that just lead to like maintenance rooms, but instead leads to, you know, a shop or somebody's apartment or whatever.
Underneath the collector's store, there's like a secret vault with stuff in there that's not for sale.
A fully grown rancor exists underneath Talkin Tauntauns' den.
But you also have like the cast member entrances and exits where clearly like the First Order comes in and out, but that really leads to another alley in or like outside of town, so you can go out that way in the game. And
yeah, I think it's cool. It's, you know, because they're not only are they giving people a chance to experience Galaxy's Edge during a unprecedented time, but they can flesh out the story of that side of the park more, and they can give us more to talk about and more, like I said, just like more meat to its bones.
Ultimately, my feelings on this are the same as everything else that has come out for the Oculus exclusively. I'll play it when it's available for a different VR.
Yeah, I still can't afford an Oculus.
It has nothing to do with that.
He just doesn't want to give Facebook money. And
I hate you, Facebook.
I don't blame you for that either.
Every time I see a charge on my credit card goes, you paid Facebook money, and I'm like,
no.
You feel dirty, don't you?
I do, but they're fun games.
Hey, Vader's out for PSVR. It's coming for PSVR.
I have been looking at a PlayStation VR a couple different times now. I think I'm going to hold off until the PlayStation 5 iteration of PlayStation VR.
I was about to
comes
say,
out.
you have to wait at least for the PlayStation 5.
It would be a massive waste of money. First of all, I got to save up for the PlayStation 5 since it's going to be coming out at a $600 price point. But I do...
Oculus
feel like
is cheaper.
Yeah, but I'll use my PS5 every day. But I feel like VR has finally gotten there, or is going to get to where I want it to be within the next like couple years, to where it feels worthwhile to drop the money on it. Because not only do you have these great Star Wars games with this Galaxy's Edge experience and Vader Immortal, there was also the first Battlefront game. They released a VR only DLC update where you did the trench run through VR.
There was the Battle of Scarif.
Oh, was it the Battle of Scarif?
Oh, yeah, that sounds awesome.
And I would love to go back and do that.
I haven't been able to. I think it's only on Hive. Is that the? I think
it's
Vive. Vive. That's the name of it.
Vive?
If that's what you're talking about.
Yes,
the HTC one.
Yes, I think it's only on that, and so like I haven't even been able to get that on mine. And then there's another actually a VR experience where you're on Tatooine, which was the first one that comes out.
Was it Trials of the Jedi or something like that?
Trials of Tatooine.
Yeah. I know the one you talk about.
I gotta say though, why the heck is Disney and ILM making Star Wars games that are like console exclusive? Like, why wouldn't you release them on everything? That's very much not in the spirit of Star Wars in my eyes.
I think it's because there are limitations of each VR headset. Some can do, like, there are ones that are better than others at certain things. So I think they're just playing to each headset's strength. That's just my guess, and me being a Disney shill.
Yeah, you're being a shill.
No, actually, I would imagine that because the VR is such a unique experience that each headset probably does have, like, you have to tailor it to that experience. And
the same thing happens when you release a game for PS4, Xbox One, PC, and Nintendo Switch. It gets done.
Well, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that it's probably hard. And also, actually, I would imagine more it's licensing with the VR experiences that you had to in order to do it for one, you have to sign like an exclusivity contract. That's why Vader Immortal probably was just on the Oculus for so long, and then you reach the end of that exclusivity. Now you can put it out for something else.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It is, but I do see your point, JJ. It is kind of weird that of a license as big as Star Wars, like why keep it to one thing? But there's some good VR experiences coming out, both within Star Wars and out of Star Wars. So I think I would say by this time next year, I'll probably own some sort of VR headset.
Yeah, Vader Immortal was also amazingly cheap for a VR experience, and so I'm assuming Oculus put up a good chunk of change to make that game as a platform seller. And so that is probably where part of that exclusivity comes from, because it was only $30 for the entire, like all 3 chapters put together. And it was
that is cheap.
And it was coming out free if you bought the headset around like Christmas time, which is when I got the headset. And so I got like all 3 games for free. And it based on the amount of money you would assume it takes to make a VR game, isn't worth 30. Like it's worth far more than $30, I would imagine, because they're not selling that many to pay for the the VR game itself.
Yeah, there had to be a big contract that allowed them to release it for a little bit cheaper.
All right, enough VR. Let's talk about Dr. Aphra. Connor, bring us in.
So this actually, Jim brought to my attention. There is a new Dr. Aphra content coming out, but it's the first that we're going to hear Dr. Aphra. I don't believe we've ever seen or heard Dr. Aphra outside of a comic book, but there is a new audio narrative coming out, and I want to make this clear. It is not a audiobook. This is an audio adventure. It's basically
audio
like
drama.
Audio drama, thank you. It's going to be fully casted, fully scripted, fully acted out, and it's going to be an adaptation and an expansion of her origin story, which I think is interesting. I think she has just a good enough origin story in the comic books that we know like a lot. We know enough about her background and her parents and where she came from and how she was brought up, but there is room to expand that. So I am super interested to see how they expand her origins and what they do. What are you guys thinking? What are you guys' thoughts on this?
I've never been a big I just don't like audiobooks. I'd much rather hold the book in my hand and read it that way. But this does sound, like you said, it's not a traditional audiobook. It's got a full cast of characters. They're acting it out, but I don't know. It's Dr. Aphra. She's one of my favorite characters from the Star Wars universe, so I'm going to give it a try. But if they were going to try a new form of media with this character, it's not what I would hope for. But that being said, I don't want to complain about getting more Dr. Aphra here, so I'll give it a shot. Not my thing, but that doesn't mean I'm not willing to try.
So when this is clearly not the first audio drama that Star Wars has ever done. The first audio dramas that Star Wars has ever done are based on the movies. We got the first the NPR audio dramas, and I did a whole history of the Star Wars audio dramas when I reviewed the most recent audio drama, which was the Count Dooku audio drama, which the name is blanking, but I have Dooku Jedi Lost, and that was the first audio drama that had come out for the new canon, and the first one we actually got in a very long time. Besides them just making audio dramas of the Shakespeare Star Wars books, which are fantastic to listen to, despite my really not liking Shakespeare all that much. And so I'm actually really excited for this because I felt that Dooku Jedi Lost, where when you make an audio drama, you have to do a lot of very weird things to the text. You need to have the characters stating things that they wouldn't normally otherwise state. Like when like so-and-so walks into a room, when you're reading it in a book, it could just say so-and-so walks into a room. But in an audio drama, you need to have one of the characters like make it blatantly obvious that so-and-so is walking to a room. Like they walk in or like, I am walking into the room now. And
oh, look, it's 000 who has entered from stage right to have a conversation with us. Hello, 000.
And so it like if you don't do it right, it is really noticeable. And so I am not an author. I cannot do this, but like you can tell when people know how to do it and like people who don't know how to do it. And I'm one of those who doesn't know how to do it. So it'd be like terrible if I were to do it. But it's a kind of a balancing act of how would you do this, because you need, for an audio drama, you need all the characters to be saying everything that's happening. And when it's done well, it's done really well. And I'm really excited because I like the full cast sort of thing, because it's very easy to keep in your mind which character is which, because all the voices are, as long as they're different enough, all the voices are very easy to kind of follow. And that was one of the problems with the Dooku, is that a couple of the characters were too close in voice, that it was hard to tell who was who, and it got a little distracting at times. But I'm
There's a few things, speaking of the cast, that don't necessarily worry me, but make me a little anxious. Namely, how is Dr. Aphra gonna sound, and will she sound completely different to the voice in my head when I read her? Like, what if they voice Dr. Aphra and they like give, like, all of a sudden they're like, what if Dr. Aphra had a heavy Southern drawl? That's never how I read her. But what, that's kind of a worry of mine.
See, you're worrying me now. I don't want that.
Like,
she actually, the reason Vader likes her so much is that is her natural voice. She sounds just like Vader.
Just like her. Or like, if they get like a Scottish girl to do her voice, it's like, oh my, Dr. Aphra is Scottish? Like, or like, but I think even more so than Dr. Aphra, whatever they choose to do for the voice of 000 is definitely going to throw me off, because I read 000 as C-3PO's voice.
I'm imagining they're going to play off a C-3PO's voice.
Yeah, because that's what makes him kind of such a unsettling yet comedic character, is he is like, he's the mirror of C-3PO. So I've always read him in the same voice as C-3PO and kind of laugh at the fact that he's got that calm delivery, but he's talking about like, oh, well, I'm going to peel his skin off and slowly prick each one of his muscles until he tells me what he wants to know. But you hear that in like Anthony Daniels' voice and you're like, God, that is 10 times creepier. So I don't know. That's my only worry, is like, what if the voices are so much more different than I expect?
Actually, if it is Anthony Daniels, I believe he had teased recently that he was doing audio something from his house.
Who knows? It could be Anthony Daniels. That'd be cool. I mean, I have my thoughts on C-3PO and Anthony Daniels, but, I've gone on that rant before.
Oh, it's okay. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, we don't need to rehash that. He's just the worst character in the whole trilogy. That's all. Not a big deal.
All right. Let's talk about the making of The Mandalorian. So there's 4 episodes out now, is that right? Or do we have a 5th yet?
I think I watched the 5th last night.
Yeah,
okay.
I think the 5th came out just this past Friday.
Yeah, it's on.
I haven't seen that one yet, but I've seen the other 4.
If it makes you feel better, JJ, the newest one it's fine. It's the least exciting of all of them, because it's all about, and usually I love when they go into the practical effects, but with The Mandalorian, the only things that were practical were the puppets, really. So it's kind of like, yeah, we know that Lucasfilm is really good with puppets. It's still interesting, but it's like, yeah, we get it. It is kind of cool. They do dive in a lot into how they got Baby Yoda to move and look so lifelike, which was kind of cool. But it's also it's not like the episode about the sets where it's like, wow, this is groundbreaking technology they're introducing. This is insane. It's just like, oh, look, Baby Yoda's super cute still. So anyway, that's my review on the newest episode, my impromptu review.
All right. So luckily there are 4 other episodes to discuss. I didn't know what to really expect with this, for how long it was going to be, episode length, how many episodes we were going to get. And I have just been delighted and pleasantly surprised with what I've seen so far. It's just been such a cool look behind the scenes. Oftentimes it's kind of just like, oh, they added this stuff in for to sell the Blu-ray or whatever, but that's not the feeling I got with any of this so far. It was such a nice look behind the curtain. I don't feel like it spoiled or ruined anything for me with the Star Wars magic either, which I really am happy to report.
Yeah, I was a little worried after watching the episode on the set designs and what they call it the volume, which is the insane technology they use to basically recreate on location sets in a studio lot. And if you haven't seen it, it's the 4th episode. Go watch it. It'll blow your mind what they were able to do. So many things that you watch.
That technology they invented, basically?
Yeah, that they literally invented. That apparently, and they say this in the episode, George Lucas was trying to make this like 20, 30 years ago, and the technology just wasn't there. So when George Lucas saw it, he was like, this is what I always envisioned we would be able to do. So I was a little worried when I saw that episode that I'm like, oh, now that I know how they made this, am I going to be able to notice it watching the show? That like, oh yeah, they're not on location. Because when I was watching the show for the first time, I just assumed they were shooting on location with so many of these things because they were shooting these vast desert valleys or these wooded areas. But to find out, like, nope, everything was shot in a lot on this crazy cool screen is insane. But then you go back and watch the episodes and you cannot tell that they're not on location. And I think it's incredible. And it once again it follows the legacy of Star Wars of not only from a narrative standpoint do they do something that ends up being a phenomenon and it's groundbreaking in its own right, but from a filmmaking perspective, they introduce technology and techniques that will change the medium going forward. And I really do think this is technology that you're going to see a lot more companies champing at the bit to get something going like this.
So just so everybody understands, if you haven't seen this yet, what Connor's talking about is Jon Favreau started working on a technology when he was directing, I believe it was The Jungle Book or Aladdin.
And Lion King. When he did both of those, he used it for both.
Jungle Book and Lion King, that used video screens, large video screens behind the actors to help them put the CGI backgrounds in. So it was a combination of video screens and then a lot of small basic props, but they're all covered in green material to make it easier for the animators with the computer animation, CGI, to put things in. And with The Mandalorian, they took that to a whole nother level where they don't need the green screen at all anymore, which I guess saves them a ridiculous amount of work by itself because not just the CGI part, but removing that green tint and reflection and color from so many reflective surfaces. I thought it was a really interesting point that I didn't even think about when they were talking about how the Mandalorian, his helmet reflects, you can see your reflection and it reflects light. So just removing, if they had to use, green screen technology, just removing the reflection from his helmet would have cost them like hundreds of thousands of dollars an episode, which is crazy. So the new incarnation of this technology is an absolutely gigantic video screen with I don't know how many monitors combined to make it work together, but it's huge. It looks like it's between like 50 and 100 feet, and it's curved, and it's almost like you're inside of a sphere, and you're standing in the middle, and the screens are all around you, and they can rotate it as the characters are moving, and they're using game engine technology. So I believe it's the Unreal 4 engine in Unity, which is another popular engine, which is crazy because what the heck's the company that makes it? Is it Riot Games who makes it?
It's Facebook.
No, it's Epic.
It's Facebook.
It's Epic Games. They just announced the Unreal 5 engine with a new lighting technology, and they said one of the biggest things for it was they expect a lot of film companies to use it. And after seeing what The Mandalorian was able to do with it, I know that the Unreal 5 engine isn't just going to be for games. A ton of movie companies are going to start using this to make films. And it was just so cool to see all of the different backgrounds and listening to the actors say how it makes it easier for them to do their jobs because it's so immersive and it looks so real.
And I think because this, like, when you watch that episode, you listen to Kathleen Kennedy talk about how excited they were about being able to use game engines and the things that you can do with game engines that you can't do with other CGI forms. I think, like you said, with Unreal 5 coming out and Epic Games being very aware that this has applications in film, I think you're going to see a lot of film companies invest more into these game design companies to create these engines. I think you're going to see a relatively rapid advancement in the quality and graphics. Not that graphics right now aren't incredibly high quality; they're insane. But I think you're going to see this investment from Hollywood into these game companies to keep creating these engines, and you're just going to see it get like rapidly better to the point where, like, I mean, the Mandalorian now is already photorealistic backgrounds. You can't, like I said, you can't tell that it's a game engine. And I just only imagine it's going to get better and better and better. And something you brought up that is so cool about the volume is the fact that those backgrounds will shift with perspective. So it's not a static background like the paintings were in Empire Strikes Back, where, you know, it's just a snowy mountaintop painted in the background. It'll change with the camera's perspective to make sure it all stays aligned, which I know sounds like boring, but like to be able to do that is really, really hard tracking technology, but also pays off in dividends to the point where my head starts thinking, like, when are they going to find like a consumer use for this? Like, is this something they could bring into the parks where you could literally step into a Star Wars location? I don't know, but it's that by far, other than
yes, you can step into a Star Wars location. Have we talked about Galaxy's Edge?
Yeah. No, we've never touched on that. That's a small part of our podcast. But yeah, that episode about the volume and the technology of the volume was so fascinating and so cool. The only other like really huge, awesome moment in this documentary that I can remember,
I know what you're gonna say.
The Dave Filoni speech, where it's just like, geez, this guy knows Star Wars. But anyway, Jim, I didn't know if you had any thoughts on the volume. I think I might have cut you off.
No, if I'm not a huge behind the scenes guy. Like I basically had the first 2 episodes of the Mandalorian documentary on in the background, and they were neat. I enjoyed them, but I haven't actually watched anything past that. So that's right. And a friend of mine made a comment about the Dave Filoni speech, and he's like, "Yeah, that's great for people who didn't realize this beforehand." Like,
yeah, I mean, it was just crazy to hear, like, the fact that, like, that was just like an unrehearsed off the top of his head. I mean, probably it's
because he loves it. It's because it's a passion. You don't need to rehearse something like that when it's, you know, coming out of your heart. And clearly, Dave Filoni loves Star Wars more than any other person on that project and in that room. And you could see how impressed everyone was and just how much, you know, they were appreciating what was being shared with them. I'm not going to, like, all those people are very intelligent and creative and successful directors, but I don't think for one second that a single person in that room, including especially Jon Favreau, had that understanding and approach and thought process about Star Wars until they heard it out of Dave Filoni's mouth. And it blew my mind too. I was just like, man, this made me appreciate this guy so much more, to know that there's someone working within Lucasfilm and within the Star Wars universe and on this project that has this much passion and care for it. Because when you have all these, you know, big time executives, like, I'm sure Kathleen Kennedy loves Star Wars a lot, but she doesn't love it like Dave Filoni does. And it makes me feel so much better about the future of Star Wars, knowing that they have somebody like him that's a part of the decision making process.
Yeah, and I think his role on The Mandalorian is perfect for him. The directorial and producer role, who's sort of guiding the story but isn't necessarily writing every script and screenplay, because, to call a spade, the weakest episode of season 1 of The Mandalorian is the one that is written and directed by Dave Filoni. And while his direction, I think you can tell, is pretty solid, and you can also tell in some of the behind-the-scenes footage, he directed it very well. He's not the best screenplay writer, and his dialogue can be kind of clunky. But just the way his brain works and how he analyzes Star Wars and how he views Star Wars is just so it's so perfect and clearly explains why he has such good track record with Star Wars. Now, like, don't get me wrong, he's missed. He's got his fair share of misses. Like I just said, that episode, the Gunslinger episode of The Mandalorian, is pretty hard to get through. There are some episodes of both the Clone Wars and the Rebels that are rough. But for the most part, like, every single thing he does absolutely captures the spirit of Star Wars. And it would be nice to see if they could find a bigger role for him. I don't, like, the people screaming, like, he should take Kathleen Kennedy's job. It's like, well, no, Kathleen Kennedy's role is a business role because she's a businesswoman. Dave Filoni is a creative. You don't put a creative in a business role. That would kill the company. But I do think he should take on a bigger role because it's so clear that he has the DNA of Star Wars ingrained in him, and he just gets it.
Well, to be fair, we don't really know what most of the roles over there are. We just know, like, they kind of, even like the story group, we know who's on it, but we don't.
But what do they
do? We don't really know what their roles are. We don't know. Like, I think Dave Filoni's on the story group, but we don't know what his role is. And I think they do that on purpose to try to, like, so we can't nitpick them about their roles.
They give the Men in Black treatment to anybody that actually finds out.
Yeah,
you stumble into the wrong room at Lucasfilm headquarters, and suddenly you're on a bench outside, and you don't remember the last 6 hours.
I you know what? Maybe that'll be a question for every guest we have that has worked with the story group. I just want to ask them blatantly, like, what do they do? Because I don't really know. Do they just sign off on, like, yeah, that works, that'll fit in canon, or do they?
It's like the two Bobs in Office Space. What would you say you do here?
That's what I want to do. I want to sit down with Matt Martin, who seems like an awesome dude. His Twitter is super fun to follow, and just be like, so why does your position exist? What are you responsible for, and how do I get your job?
Yeah, Matt is a pretty awesome dude. I've met him a few times.
Yeah, so we shouldn't grill him too much.
He won't tell you.
Yeah, I don't think they're allowed to.
He'd have to kill you.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of non-story group things, so we can wrap up news and get to comic stuff, quick PSA that I threw into our agenda, because I think I've talked about this game every episode for the last, like, 5 episodes. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is free for PlayStation owners.
On Tuesday, I'm going to be playing with, I think, my friend Dana and I are definitely playing, and I'm going to try to convince Pat to play as well. So I'll finally get to hear what all the fuss is about. Fellow
AIPT contributor Jason Segura. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but I'm going to go with that way. He's told me on Twitter he's probably going to pick it up too because it's been a while. And I'm just telling you, people, give it a shot, especially if you're on PlayStation. It's free, and I think you guys will be pretty pleasantly surprised on how the game plays now. I'm also kind of excited because hopefully it'll bring in a bunch of new players and will kind of even out the playing field, because right now the only people playing it are all people who have been playing it nonstop for 2.5 years, and they're crazy good, and it can get kind of frustratingly hard because you just get wrecked. But it's a ton of fun. That's my PSA. Download it when it comes available on Tuesday because it's a good game. Though make sure you have an extended hard drive because it's probably going to be like 180 gigs.
Yeah, I recommend the story mode as well.
No, it's not that big. They're not giving people access to the expansions.
But it's the Celebration Edition. So it's
sure?
Yeah, it's all of it because all of those updates were free. So it's gonna be a chunky download. We'll
okay, so I'll play it on Tuesday at like 8:00 at night after it's done downloading.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about comics and then we can get out of here.
Hold on. We got one more news article that I'm super excited for.
Go.
There's a new Disney Plus show coming out that they just released the trailer for, Jedi Temple Challenge. And for all of those my age or around my age, there was a show on Nickelodeon.
Man, I know. I was there too.
Yeah,
you're around my age.
Don't you age-splain to me? I know what Legends of the Hidden Temple is.
Yes, what you weren't even born yet,
man.
I think Legend of the Hidden Temple got canceled when I was like 4.
It was 93 to 95. 93 to 95.
Sorry, it was 2 when it got canceled. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah. And so, like, Legends of the Hidden Temple was a game show on Nickelodeon where kids went running around a like creepy temple. I actually saw it when it was on tour. They did the tour things like you can't do that on television, and all the Nickelodeon shows went on tour. And I've seen it. I'm super excited. It's hosted by our favorite Gungan, Ahmed Best. And I love the fact that he's kind of coming back, because I know he took a beating from the fan community for his portrayal as Jar Jar, and he did not deserve it. And I am so happy that he's coming back to host this show, kind of to come back into the Star Wars fold.
He's a Jedi now, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say he's a Jedi, and he pulls off the look very well.
He does.
Also, apparently Legends of the Hidden Temple is rebooted on Quibi, that new streaming service.
Oh, God, Quibi.
Which I don't know what it is, but apparently it's back.
I can send you some links about Quibi. Quibi's if anyone
no,
has
that's okay. You don't need to. We don't
afternoon
need
to kill. You can go into a Quibi rabbit hole about the failure of that service, but no, it is. I think it's very cool. I remember when this was announced I don't know if it was announced. I think Ahmed Best teased it that he was doing something Star Wars related and that it was going to be like a game show type thing. But it's really, really cool to see him be brought back into the fold.
I don't think it's not he was brought back. I think he came back because he was never alienated from the fold. I don't think he wanted to be part of the fold.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's a better way to put it, and I don't blame him. And it's also funny because it goes back to what we were talking about with the volume. Is like, though Jar Jar Binks, yes, was kind of an annoying character. I mean, kind of, that's putting it lightly. But the technology used to create Jar Jar Binks was absolutely groundbreaking at the time. Like, that was the first major use of motion capture technology on a person. And I remember, can't remember where I read it, but I read an article about it that, like, George Lucas and Ahmed Best, when they created Jar Jar Binks, they thought they were creating, like, the next, like, what was the name of the Charlie Chaplin character that he had? The poor person. Somebody help me. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, he was supposed to be like a Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah, like, and they thought like that's what they were creating, and then so for it all to come down was kind of a bummer. So it's really cool to see him back, and the fan response to this has been like pretty overwhelmingly positive. So it's cool, and I will likely watch it, and I hope they make a spin-off that's for adults. Maybe they can pit a bunch of podcasts against each other. That'd be fun. All right,
that was all. I just wanted to talk about that because I just saw the trailer for it like last night, and I was super excited.
All right, let's talk about comic books. There's only one comic book here that really matters in my eyes, and that's Dr. Aphra, #1.
She's finally back.
Alyssa Wong, and off the top of my head, I can't remember who draws it.
Hold on, I got it right here. It's good radio here. Listen to the bag and board open up.
I don't even have to open
Rosenberg
it up.
Is doing colors.
Rachel Rosenberg.
Rochelle
Rosenberg.
Oh, excuse me, Rochelle Rosenberg. She's
artist
doing
is
colors, though.
Marika Cresta.
Marika Cresta.
Okay.
Yeah.
Marika.
Cool. Yeah. So this is what I'm looking for out of Dr. Aphra. So we've been waiting for this book for a while. First off,
yeah.
But there's some extenuating circumstances that we're all very aware of. But anyway, this is what I was really hoping for with Dr. Aphra. Kind of like a cool down from fighting with Darth Vader in the head echelons of like the Rebel Alliance and the Empire.
The public relations director of the Empire.
Yeah, I'm just looking for Aphra to come like way back down to Earth and mess around with some ancient artifacts and hidden temples. OMAC, wink, wink.
Basically, bring her back to her roots that she started as a terrible Indiana Jones.
Steal some stuff and cause some trouble and find some ancient cursed, stuff. I don't know, but this is where we're headed, and I'm excited about it.
Yeah, Jim put it perfectly. This is the return to the Aphra roots, and I really enjoyed the entirety of the first run of Dr. Aphra. Like, I don't think there was a low point for it. I liked all of it, but I did enjoy the stories about her simply searching out artifacts. Those were the ones I liked the most. And to see this one go back to that and have that be at least the main focus of this first arc is awesome. And kind of diving into that, it dives into a weird corner of Star Wars that we don't really think about, which is like the academic community within Star Wars and how that
I don't know. I think about the academic community all the time.
Well, you are an academic. But I love that, like, they're expanding on this, like, very niche corner where it turns out, like, no, there is a very alive and well academic community within the Star Wars universe that we're now getting to find out about. And it's really cool, and you're also getting, like, more about Dr. Aphra's backstory in this first issue, where it turns out her and Lucky have been doing jobs together for a while, but have this, like, strained relationship, and then the other archaeologists that we meet in this issue, turns out they have a bit of a strained relationship too, and maybe there's, like, a little bit of romantic tension there too. I don't know, it just, to combine what both you... Oh, sorry, Jim, I just bumped my mic, you're gonna get upset. I'm sorry.
God!
I was being violent with my hands. Sorry. Here, I'll close my hands. We're on video, listeners, so they can see me. Like, to combine what you guys both said, is this is a return to the roots of Aphra, which is just awesome. But it's also introducing a lot of new stuff that works perfectly. So this was exactly what I wanted out of the Aphra relaunch, and I'm super stoked on it.
Yeah, like I love the artwork is fantastic. The story is bounty hunters. You can take a cue from this. Easy to follow.
Yeah, we'll get into bounty hunters in a bit.
And like I love the new characters, like Deda Yao, the student. We're still not convinced she actually is a student. That comes in and, like, she just casually kills the guy that tries to strangle her. Like, oh, help me, get off of me.
That was great.
I love the way that Alyssa Wong, that's the writer's name, right? It's Alyssa Wong?
Yes.
I love the way that she wrote this new character in, like, almost a little obvious that, yeah, she's not at all who she's claiming to be. And I also love the fact that Aphra immediately catches it. Like, there's that moment later, like towards the end of the book, where Aphra sees her talking to the other archaeologist. She's like, "Oh wow, she's good. Like, she knows what she's doing."
She's admiring how much of a scumbag she's being, like a con artist.
I loved it so much, and these new characters seem to fit right in immediately. Like.
And the name the fact that the guy's name is just Lucky.
So good. It's like so dumb, but also kind of perfect.
I mean, it opens perfectly. Aphra with that other bounty hunter who lasts about, like, I don't know, 2 pages before he's like, the price on your head is too high. And she's like, yeah, you're right, it is. Boom, you're dead.
It's like, you shouldn't have trusted me. Yeah, I didn't.
Alyssa Wong gets it. She really gets the character. Like, that is abundantly clear in the first issue, and I'm sold. Like, I can't wait to see what she does with it. She's got Aphra's attitude, her voice, her devious thought process, her selfishness. When Lucky is like, you wouldn't leave me behind. Wait a minute, yes, you totally would.
Yeah, that was great. And the thing about these new characters is, obviously there are some main characters from the first run of Dr. Aphra who are missing. BT and 000, the biggest ones, who are no longer. If I'm not mistaken, 000 is just dead. Like, he's just gone. Well, he's a droid, so he's not really gone. But Magna
he's still in our heart.
Yeah, he's like Sugar Ray. Sorry, that was a deep cut cameo reference. Anyway, but with 000 and BT being missed, or being out of there, and then Magnetoven and Vulada, I believe is her name, her ward, I was a little worried, like, can these new characters fill the void of these other, like, recurring characters and cast members that are missing now? But like I didn't even notice any of these characters were missing because these new characters that got introduced are so lively and that there's not like too much exposition of explaining who these new characters are, but there's just enough of like their backstories and their histories revealed in dialogue that it's enough to give each character characterization. I loved it. So I don't think you could ask for a better Dr. Aphra relaunch.
Yeah, I'm not gonna disagree with anything you just said. It was a fantastic first issue. I'm stoked for Alyssa Wong. I'm stoked to see where this story goes. And by nature, Aphra gets herself into trouble, but I'm hoping that trouble remains outside of the Rebel Alliance and the Empire. Like, she seems to be pissing off a powerful, rich guy who likes destroying valuable things. So let's keep it in that arena for a while, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that.
We're also dealing with a very tight time period because the time between Empire and Jedi is not a very long time, and it's never been officially declared by Lucasfilm how actual long it is. We just know that that Empire starts around 3 years and Jedi starts around 4 years after A New Hope, but we don't know how long Empire is. So we're dealing in a tight time period.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
A lot is going on their front, so I can imagine them just kind of trying to keep this along at the same pace as the other comics, but sticking out of it.
Yeah, I think this is one that you could have done right. You know, you're gonna want to have like the main Star Wars title end when it gets to Return of the Jedi. But I feel with Dr. Aphra, you could just keep it going because she's not involved in the main trilogy. So it's like just tell her story that exists kind of outside the galactic conflict. Like have that galactic conflict kind of get in her way every once in a while, but I like it more when it's like Dr. Aphra doesn't directly get involved. Like, I never want to see like, oh, Dr. Aphra's in the rebellion now. I don't want to see that. Like, don't give me that. Keep her on the outskirts as Space Indiana Jones.
So,
All
Connor,
right.
Connor, I want to know what your feelings on Bounty Hunters #2 is.
So I reread it last night in preparation for this. And there's some things I really like, and there's really just one thing I really don't like. I will start with the things I like first, because I know Jim agrees with me on the thing I don't like. I do really enjoy the backstory that we're getting around the villain, I guess. That I have to look up their names again because I can't think what their name is off the top of my head. Give me a second. Bad radio. This is bad radio. I'm opening a comic book. Nanako Lash is like the bounty they're all chasing of the titular bounty hunters. And I like how they show his or her background, because I don't know. We'll go with their background. And they show that this, even though like all these bounty hunters are chasing after them because they, ruined a job that we saw in the first issue, they kind of show, or the writer Ethan Sachs shows a little bit of their backstory to show, well, they actually aren't all bad. They went out of their way to help Baylor Valence because they saw Baylor Valence doing a good thing and helping a starving kid. So I'm interested to see how they continue to characterize this perceived villain. And also, we've gone over this before. I'm a big Baylor Valence fan. I think the way they've brought him back into canon and the couple stories involving him have all been great. And I really enjoyed the way Ethan Sachs writes Baylor Valence, and he gets the character and his anger and his rage and his aggression towards the Empire. Those are the good things. The bad things. I hate the art in this book. I hate it so much. And Jim, I'll pass this over to you because I know you agree. You cannot follow what's going on.
No, and that's like a part of the script problem and part of the art problem is it's incomprehensible at times. The first issue was by far worse than this one, but I think
this is an improvement. Agreed.
Yeah, I think that's just a matter of the story that they're trying to tell. I don't think that they got any better. I think they just were telling a different part of the story that was easier to follow. But even then, I was all over the place. They said that the first part takes place a while ago. I don't remember the exact phrasing, but then they never tell you when you move up in time to the current time. And so I'm pretty sure it's after the ad in the comic that we like move up in time. But I'm like, okay, are we now current? Okay, after a couple pages, like, oh yeah, we're definitely current. It would have been nice if you told me that. And also the fact that his face is off. Half his face is missing when they first find him. But this takes place before the beginning of the last issue when he has a full face. So he basically had half a face at some point before the first issue, got a full face back, and then lost that same half a face again in that first issue.
I thought of that last night when I was reading. I'm like, they must have just so because like you said, so to make it clear to everybody, he had half a face. This group of bounty hunters discovers him, fixes him up, puts fake skin over his half face. They go to do a job together. Half that face gets blown off.
The same half.
The exact same half. He doesn't put the half of the face back on ever again. So I'm just assuming eventually he just went, okay, whatever. Like I have half a face. So,
it's just the timing of things and it's just driving me bonkers.
And what sucks is it's an otherwise pretty decent story. You know, it's interesting. Like I said, I think the main bad guy or girl or person, Nanako Lash or Nanako Lash, is interesting, and I want to see why they turned against the Mourner's Wail and what was the reasoning behind it. I think that mystery has me intrigued to learn more about that character. But just the way the transitions from panel to panel work in this is so frustrating. And that's not to say it's all bad. There's some great pages in here. Like there's a splash page of Boba Fett when Baylor's looking at what Boba did to that bar
through the reflection in his helmet.
Yeah, that was that. There's a splash page. I did it again. I bumped my mic again. It's too close to my face. There's a splash page that shows the Boba Fett like firing his flamethrower and stuff like that. That is absolutely gorgeous. And then there is a like somewhat play on like a 9-panel grid showing Boba Fett interrogating people or interrogating that one. What's the race that I'm thinking of? The alien race. It doesn't matter. But and like that was, I think that was like the first instance. I'm like, well, there you go. That's like a really well set up page. But there's so much of this that is so jarring that you just can't really follow it that well, and that's kind of a bummer. I also think that shows that like Ethan Sachs is relatively new to the comic book medium. He's only been writing comics for like 2 years, and I think that kind of shows here, unfortunately, that he hasn't really grasped the flow of comics yet. So, kind of hurts the book.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to what you two just did.
Yeah, sorry, I don't like to trash on things, but if I can't follow a story, it really takes out the enjoyment for me. And I've read every Star Wars story, so
I don't ever want to be a shameless, I just don't ever,
chill.
Yeah, I just don't ever want to seem like we're praising things because they're Star Wars and only because they're Star Wars. I've read a few Star Wars comics that I've really, really disliked and been very honest about that in my reviews on the site. Unfortunately,
Mace Windu, we're looking at you.
Yeah, God.
The comic was terrible.
We don't need to go back to that. But yeah, hopefully this improves over time. I'm not going to write the book off after 2 issues, but it really needs to change a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah, it needs... Obviously, we don't have a behind-the-scenes process, know all of it, because this could be a script problem, where it's just not scripted very well, and that's why it's hard to follow, or it could be a miscommunication between the writer and the artist, and it's an art problem. I don't know, but something's got to give, because it doesn't matter how good a story is, if it's not represented well in the visuals in comics, which is a visual medium, the story's going to falter, and that kind of sucks. And what's even weird is the artist, I don't have his first name on hand, but Villanelli, like, I'm pretty sure he did the art for the Galaxy's Edge miniseries. So this isn't Sachs and this is the second time they're teaming up together, and I don't remember the Galaxy's Edge series being this hard to follow.
No, it was basically a series of miniseries.
A series of flashbacks.
Yeah, and so it was basically you had a framing story, and then in each issue you had a flashback. So it's a series of series.
So, yep. I mean, to paraphrase what JJ said, I'm not going to give up on this series yet. I don't think I ever will, because it's a Star Wars series, and I want to read and collect all the Star Wars canon comics. But it could get better. I'll just put it that way.
I did not read the last comic on our notes here. Did you guys?
I read it last night, actually.
Yeah, it's the Star Wars Adventures, the Clone Wars Battle Tales. And so Star Wars Adventures have been doing comics for Star Wars. It's a IDW, not Marvel. And they've been generally a lot younger focused comics. And most of the comics that they release are essentially one shots. Sometimes even have two comics within one series that are geared towards tweens, I guess would be a good description of it. This isn't their greatest comic. It's set before the Battle of Christophsis, which again is a murky time period, and then flashes back to some time during the Clone Wars. And so it's like some time before this. And I'm like, you don't have much time before this in the Clone Wars. I'm like, how are you flashing back in a time period that like is supposed to take place fairly shortly after episode 2?
In the context of the story, I honestly read it as like, oh, this must have been Anakin's first mission with Captain Rex.
That's why I took that as well. And it has to, but he already has a scar.
Yeah.
Anakin already had a scar, and we're assuming he's already a knight by this point. We don't know when he's actually knighted in canon. And so it has to be at least sometime after the beginning of the Clone Wars. And it's not my favorite. It is what it is. It's kind of
it was fun, but it wasn't, nothing super memorable. It made me think like, oh yeah, this read a lot like a Clone Wars episode, like an early Clone Wars episode where it's enjoyable and there's explosions and fights and all that, but it doesn't say anything of meaning. There's no greater reveal about a character. It just reinforces what we already know. And it was fun. It was a nice little jaunt back to the Clone Wars era now that we don't really have any Clone Wars content.
Yeah, it was cute.
Actually, that's better. It was cute.
It was cute.
It wasn't fun. It was cute.
It was cute. I do want to recommend something I just finished reading that I rather enjoyed. It came out over the last year and a half or so. Show you. It's the Lost Stars manga.
Oh yeah, I have that.
The Lost Stars was a story by Claudia Gray that came out near the beginning of the canon announcement, and it is still one of the best canon stories. It was written as a young adult story, but it is absolutely fantastic. And they made a manga adaptation that is 3 volumes long, and the manga adaptation is just as good as the story itself. It is absolutely fantastic. I really loved it. I flew through all 3 manga volumes once I got the hang of the fact that I was reading a book backwards. It took me a little while to get to figure that out. But I would recommend that. I thought the art is great. The story is similar. They rearrange actually some of the book itself to fit into this new adaptation, but it works great.
Doesn't it read right to left though? Because it's manga.
So you're reading the book backwards, but you're also reading the panels backwards. But you're still reading the text left to right. So you're reading your panel on the right. You read text as you read in English, left to right. But you're starting on the right panel, and then you move to the left panel. Like it's exactly like you read a comic book, but you're reading the panels in a reverse order.
I used to read a lot of manga in college and high school. It's really easy to get used to.
It took me probably 10 pages before it was one of those like you do it without thinking about it sort of thing.
Did it throw you for a loop when you went back to American comics or Western comics and were like, oh wait, I'm reading this backwards?
No, because the manga is such a smaller format. It doesn't feel like you're reading the same type of thing, and so it's like you're reading a kids. It's the same size as those the paperback kid books, young adult books. So it's the same height and width as those, and so it feels like you're reading one of those, but you're reading it as a comic book. That's all I have to say about that.
I think that's all we have to say for this episode.
Yeah, it was a
good one. We covered a lot. Man, almost an hour and a half of Star Wars news.
It's good stuff. That's good, clean family fun with only a little bit of swearing.
I told you there was a lot of news.
You're not wrong.
When JJ was like, "We got enough for an episode, right?" I was like, "Yeah, we got a lot."
Oh, wasn't there? Didn't I just read that there was news about one of the Thrawn books?
Oh, that's right. Two news items that didn't make it in the news. The
quick hits.
Quick hits.
Quick hits here.
The High Republic series got pushed back. It was supposed to start in the end of August. It got pushed back to the beginning of January because of the pandemic messed up their timelines. But the new Thrawn book actually got moved up. I don't remember when it was supposed to. I think it was October. It was original release date. It got moved up to the beginning of September.
Which I'm stoked about because Thrawn is one of my favorite all-time Star Wars characters. I get it. In both instances, I see why they made these changes. Thrawn is an established character with 2 trilogies and a presence in Rebels. It's not a new initiative that's launching a whole new chapter of Star Wars with brand new characters in an area of the timeline that they've never explored before. Clearly, they want a lot of pomp and circumstance and a lot of events to surround this, so it makes total sense to me.
Well, Thrawn itself was initially slated to be released soon around now. I thought it was like June or May, and then they pushed it way back to October. And they never explained why they pushed it way back. They just said it wasn't about the book itself. It was about scheduling. And so it seems like that was something easier to move up because since the book was already done, and essentially it was just pushed back for scheduling purposes, that once you moved the High Republic back, you now had a blank slate or a blank spot that you can move this book up a little. And that's probably what they're playing around with. We probably are moving the High Republic back for something along the lines as we want to make this a grand event. And also, like, if some of the things a little later in the year are being delayed, why don't we just move this whole series back so the whole thing can kind of come out in the pattern that we were hoping?
Definitely.
And then now we can move Thrawn up to fill that gap that we now had.
I'm sure they're going to be involving events at Galaxy's Edge as well, which is part of the reason they pushed it back. There's no way they're not going to incorporate a Star Wars theme park into the release of something that big.
Yeah. It's a bummer, but, it all makes sense.
All right. So now
quick...
we're done for real this time.
Yes. Keep your eyes out on Tuesday. There's supposedly... EA Motive is supposed to be revealing a new Star Wars game, but it's supposed to be like a smaller scale game. It's probably going to be a mobile game, but I'm just going to throw that out there.
Hey, mobile
done with
games.
quick hits.
All right. This time, for real, we're done. So thanks for listening, guys. We really appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed the show. Whether you did or did not enjoy the show, we would love to hear from you because your feedback is very helpful for us with making the show better for you and for ourselves. And please, we'd love to hear from you. So you can, the best way to get in contact with us, I would say, is email. Jim, you want to tell them where they can reach us?
Yeah, you can email us at Talkin Tauntauns at aiptcomics.com. You could also directly tweet at me or at the show's Twitter, which is at AIPT Comics, or mine is at Jazznator, and I combine all the comments that we get, and we'll individually talk to you about your concerns.
And maybe we'll even bring you on the show. Who knows? But yeah, you can find all of us on AIPTcomics.com, where we share lots of reviews of Star Wars comics, such as Dr. Aphra #1 and Bounty Hunters #2. The films, the TV shows, we reviewed all of the final season of Clone Wars. You can expect us to review all of season 2 of The Mandalorian, and we review pretty much every other comic book out there. So every Wednesday we have the most comic reviews anywhere, and a whole lot of other nerdy stuff throughout the week.
Yeah, and while you're at the website, why don't you give us your email and sign up for the newsletter, which I am actually going to send as soon as we're done recording.
And there is also three other podcasts, which are all excellent, and I highly recommend, that cover comic books. One covers movies, and another covers wrestling. And I happen to be a co-host on the wrestling one. So if you like wrestling or you're interested in getting in wrestling, check it out. You'll find me there. But that is going to do it. So thanks a lot for being with us today, guys. I had a lot of fun. It's nice talking with my friends about Star Wars when things aren't so nice in the rest of the world. So hopefully this episode gave you, an hour and a half of fun and enjoyment when things can be a little stressful. So we hope you're all safe and okay, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, Yukio.